I am Nicholas Frank. I am the marketing manager here at MRI Software, but we are very lucky to be joined by Tom Kiernan, the CEO of ClickPay, Ringo Lanzetti, managing partner of Studebaker Submetering, and then Scott Mahler, who's the president of Datex Property Solutions. All three of them are going to be speaking to you today about their specific solutions and then answering some questions that I've prepared and hopefully answering some of the questions that you can bring to today's session. First, I do want to give a little bit of an overview for those of you who may not be as familiar with MRI, what we are striving to do, why we're bringing partners like these three to you today and presenting them for you. We've had a mark in the real estate industry for over 40 years. We are coming up on 45 years of market leadership and helping clients manage their properties. This is even before we had enterprise software, before there were things like the cloud. MRI software has been a staple in many companies' businesses for over 40 years. And we've expanded. We have now over 500 employees, not only domestically, but worldwide. You'll see some of those little markers on the screen. Those are company headquarters that we have throughout the world. And we've been expanding at quite a rapid pace over the past couple of years specifically. We now have over 2,700 valued clients across multiple pieces of software that we offer in the commercial space, multifamily space, and more recently in the investment space as well. And we have clients, again, all over the world that we have really come to cherish and value because they have become a part of the MRI family. Also a part of that family is our industry partners. We have 55 plus partners that are part of our Partner Connect program, and that's not even considering those that we have as internet listing services partners. All these people coming together to hopefully help you as our clients, as our family, empower your portfolios with as many solutions and best-of-breed software companies available. So how do we do that? One thing that MRI Software we've spoken about a lot in the past couple of years is providing this MRI experience and delivering best-of-breed solutions to our client base. And what that means is that we're looking beyond what we can offer as a standalone solution. One size fits all no longer works for the typical client because you have many different processes that you're looking to manage, and they're not all going to necessarily come from the same place. You have different departments who are doing different things, looking at your data differently, and you have different solutions. You may be using them now. You may have other ones that you need to move forward with. And at MRI, we've come to that realization that we don't have every single solution you need, but we're going to go out of our way to make sure that you can get the solution you need and make sure that it works with MRI software. So as you'll see at the bottom of this screen, we have a lot of different ways that we can help deliver best-of-breed solutions for you. One of them being our MRI application toolkit. So we have a product in place that allows you to configure your own solution and customize your MRI software environment to meet your specific needs, your specific reporting needs. At the same time, we also create the MRI application exchange. So if you do have a customization or configuration that you need, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel if someone else has already done that for you. And so we have MRI and client-created applications available, and think of it like an app store where you can go and find certain solutions. So before you go and try to find a way to do it yourself, get it and take it from us through the application exchange. Then we have our Partner Connect program, which is what we're going to focus on here today, where we integrate with a massive amount of industry experts and industry solutions that are best of breed to give you a full rounded experience when it comes to what it is you're looking for in property management software. So we have found and looked for some of the best products on the market and worked with these companies to integrate with MRI to provide you a seamless experience. We know that we can't do everything perfectly. Rather than us try and attempt to make something, we have partnered with best-of-breed solutions so that you don't have to move into MRI for certain applications. You can utilize some of the industry leaders, and they work directly with MRI. Last but not least, we have our information exchange, where you can build custom APIs between MRI and any application. And let us know if there are applications that would become better partners if they were part of our Partner Connect program. We're always looking for other best-of-breed solutions, and if we're not currently offering it for you and you have to use the information exchange, well, then you should also come and talk to us because maybe they could become part of this Partner Connect program. So the Partner Connect network, we strive and focus on providing all of our clients the ability to leverage any innovative solution that would work with MRI's own market-leading solutions to create an environment that works best for you. Currently, we have 46 product partners covering almost all the industry verticals in the real estate space from A to Z. Little joke there as we only go to vendor management at this point, but we're looking for that Y and that Z partner, or Z, to come along. We also offer 11 service partners who also support the implementation, configuration of the MRI solution, as well as other Partner Connect product partner solutions into this robust network. And we have received a lot of new partners to come into the Partner Connect program in the last year, and always encourage you to go to our website and check out all those solutions that we do have to offer. Again, the three that we'll be speaking to today are all part of the MRI Partner Connect network, and we are very happy to have all of them come and speak to you today. We're going to get started here, and I'm going to introduce Tom Kiernan of ClickPay, and he's going to kick us off and talk about how data is both the problem and solution in real estate payments and billing. So, Tom, if you are on the line, I am ready to hand it over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Yeah, I just want to build on something Nick said, is that I think I speak for all the other business partners on the phone here, that none of what we could do in terms of the way we service and work with our clients could be done without the incredibly willing and able business partner that MRI is. There are a number of other real estate, property management, accounting software, and property management software companies out there that talk a lot about being willing to partner, but I don't think anyone out there backs it up the same way that MRI does in terms of their time and energy and the amount of investment they put into trying to create this seamless experience. And really that all of that seamlessness all kind of ties to today's topic, which is the data and the data integration. But before we get into the topic, I just want to spend 1 minute introducing ClickPay, just so everyone knows a little bit about who we are, what we do, and who we do it for. I'm one of the founders here at ClickPay, and I'm the CEO. We started the company back in 2009, so we've been at it for about 7 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the business has evolved. But essentially what we do is billing and payments for real estate, and I think it's important to note we don't do any other industry, so there's no kind of distraction or other focus. The only thing we're doing is working to help streamline the billing and payment process for condos, co-ops, residential rental, commercial rental, apartments, office spaces, REITs. That's the only sector we work in. So our entire product roadmap, all of our service team, all of our data team, that's all anybody, roughly 60 or so employees now and growing. That's all that we do here. So, we've grown pretty significantly, in particular over the last couple of years. We're now processing many, many billions of dollars for tens of thousands of properties, all the way from where we're headquartered here in the New York and Northeast market all the way to Hawaii. As I mentioned, we kind of play across all sectors, where some of the companies in our space are just focused on kind of residential rentals. We really work across all different aspects of the real estate industry. And I think there's a lot of things that I like to think make us unique, but probably the one central item is our name is ClickPay, so our DNA is kind of in the electronic payments and electronic billing. But really what makes us different is that we are consolidating the entire receivables process. So we're kind of an all-in-one platform, whether that be paper checks that are scanned on site or sent to our lockbox, which we own and operate. We're consolidating. We're basically processing every bill, every payment for our customers, moving the money to the right bank account, and then crediting the right ledger in MRI, not just, kind of an online portal where people are making payments. So, I think that's just kind of a little bit about who we are and what we do. I want to move quickly on to just get into the topic today, which is data. And it kind of ties to a little bit of the story of the evolution of our company. Back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, I guess, but 7 years ago, I don't think we had any idea. We thought we were building a payment company, and we thought that the big challenge would be to move the money. That's what payment companies do. But I think we quickly learned that the challenge is not necessarily moving the money, but it's really moving the data. In the early days, it was like just an entry box. People had to know how much they needed to pay. They would type it in. They'd hit submit. The money would go to the right bank account. And clients could download Excel files and manually key their payments into MRI. Very quickly, it became clear that that was not the optimal user experience for either the property manager or for the resident making the payment. The resident making the payment wanted to see how much they owe. They wanted to, and then the property manager didn't want to have to key all these payments into their system. So we went to kind of exchanging a scheduled data exchange. First, there was clients, running a custom report in MRI and manually pushing a file out to us once a month. That changed to manually pushing out a file to us once a week, which then kind of went into a more custom scheduled exchange process, and kind of has brought us to where we are today, which is a full API. And for those who may not be so technical, basically what that means is that the data is essentially syncing in the cloud. There's nobody pushing and pulling files. If you're making changes in MRI, you're putting somebody on the do not accept list, you're adding a new tenant to your ledger, you're changing people's charges or balances owed or doing your rollover, all of that information is seamlessly being updated on our side. So any resident logging in can see how much they owe, not just their balance, but all of their line item charges that they owe. And when they make payments, all of those payments, as the money hits your bank account, those payments are being batched into MRI, and you can basically look in your bank statement, you can look in your MRI batch reports, and you can look in QuickPay's bank reconciliation reports. And whether somebody paid by credit card or an online ACH or mailed their check to our P.O. box, you can see all of those payments and reconcile them all down to the ledger. And it's evolved to the point where we now even have the ability to apply line item charges to, like if somebody in a commercial property wanted to pay their taxes but not their rent at a certain time of the month, they could choose that individual charge code and just pay that item and have it applied just to that item in the ledger. And that just kind of speaks to the level of kind of specificity and sophistication of the way that the data exchanges have evolved over time. And I don't expect anything less. All the kind of new feature sets and requests that customers are asking for us and MRI to work on, pretty much all of them kind of tie back to some enhanced way of moving the data to help streamline things and improve their business. So, we've come a long way in a short period of time in terms of the way things have evolved. I want to now kind of move on to, not talk about just the evolution, but really talk about how data, this is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek slide, but you've got a little pie chart here. When a problem comes up in the billing and payment business, and problems, many of the people on this phone call, I'm sure, have heard one of these. Somebody says that they paid, but for whatever reason, when you look at MRI on their ledger, they're not getting credit for the payment, or a payment was misapplied, or if somebody can't register online, they're having problems registering online. Any of the problems that you can think of around billing and payments, 98% of the time, the root cause can be traced back to a data issue. It's probably 2% of the time that the check got lost in the mail, it was the post office, or some kind of user error. Almost all of the issues, when you really lift under the covers and try to figure out what went wrong somewhere along the way, it can almost always be traced back to either problems with the data was incorrect when it came to QuickPay, there was a transmission issue, somebody was running a planned maintenance update at the same time that the sync was happening. There's a million different of potential causes for problems in our business when you process millions of payments and billions of dollars, some small percentage of them questions are going to come up, and when those questions come up, it's almost always the data. And I think, you can even just kind of see it among our employee base. We've got a customer service team, we've got a team of developers, we've got a team of salespeople, we have a large customer service people answering phone calls from your tenants and from property managers and by live chat and phone and email. But we actually have a whole dedicated team, and there's nothing that those people do when they wake up and come to work every day. These are just data and integration specialists, and those are the people that are making sure that the data is, that the data has got the quality issues, that they're making sure that things are transmitting correctly. They're writing, anytime a problem comes up, they're coming up with kind of a, hey, how can we create an alert for that? If one property didn't do their rollover, for example, and we got updated charges out of MRI, and the balance for one property was $0 for everybody in that property because they didn't do their monthly rollover. When our auto pay runs and we pull $0 in the auto pay, what happens is 2 weeks later the tenant calls saying, hey, I had auto pay set up, how come you're charging me a late fee? It's because it traced back to a data issue, and how can we create alerts for potential issues around that, so those kind of things. So I can't stress enough, it's just everything comes down to good data, the quality of data, the timeliness of data, and the amount of data. It's gives us a lot of power. So moving on the next slide, I just wanted to talk about, I've talked about some of the problems that were solved, but I also want to talk about some of the solutions that data provides. You guys may, I'm sure people have issues where a tenant sends in a check and they don't include any remittance information, they don't include their MRI account number, they just write Unit 3C on the memo, and now you've got to figure out how to apply that payment. In a traditional lockbox, they would just reject that check and send it back to you and let you figure it out. And in ClickPay world, we don't believe in that. So we have all of the data out of MRI. We can look up if the name matches and the unit matches in 3C. We can key in the account number one time, and then our check scanning, in our lockbox will remember that check the next time it comes in and be able to apply it automatically without any kind of manual entry. If somebody goes onto their online bill pay, they log on to Wells Fargo's website to pay 60 Main Street LLC and send the payment through their online banking. Those checks, again, if they didn't include their MRI account number, they wrote Unit 3C. Our software has kind of an algorithm. Well, it'll look. It has an API with all the banks, so it says, hey, there's a payment that wants to be paid to this customer. Do you recognize this payee? Do you recognize the tenant? They didn't include the account number, but there's a name match and a unit match. Okay, we've found a good match, and then it could just automatically use the data to match the right tenant to the right payment to make sure the money moves to the right bank account to credit the right resident ledger, and in a way that only just a couple of years ago, somebody would have to go through, that check would have gone through snail mail, been received by a lockbox, sent back to the client, who would then manually review the information, manually keyed the information in, manually filled out a deposit slip, and then walked the check to the bank. We're using data to just kind of power that whole solution from end to end, so the money moves electronically and the credit for the payment moves electronically into MRI. So I think that's just at a high level. We wanted to just generally introduce from the world of billing and payments, how the importance of data, the quality of data, and I think we're going to get into some Q&A in the end, and we can talk some more about some practical suggestions for what you can do to help use data effectively as it relates to billing and payments. But that kind of covers our intro topic, and I'm going to turn it over to Ringo to talk to you guys about Studebaker and submetering. We've been doing business with some shared customers of MRI and Studebaker and ClickPay, so excited to hear Ringo speak.
Thanks, Tom. So as the slide says here, we're trying to really bring the bring the concept of how we manage data better, particularly through the MRI platform. And so as the slide says, without an efficient way to receive utility bills, measure consumption, or bill tenants, utilities can become the costliest unmanaged data to your business. And so I'm going to just kind of play that a couple of scenarios, I guess, through that opening intro there, and introduce the company. If we can move on to the next slide. And as Tom said, Ringo Lanzetti, I'm one of the founding members and managing partners of Studebaker Submetering. And the overview of this slide's pretty generic. It pretty much says what we need to say about what we do. I think you all are probably familiar with submetering and allocation billing. But I guess what I'd focus on here is we're entering our 17th year of business. We're a full-service submetering company, and we can get into any specific questions about that later. But I wanted to focus on, for the purpose of this seminar, the seamless integration mentioned on this slide before us, because, again, this is really focusing on what you can do with data and how you could take the data and manipulate it and use it to your advantage. And I think if we move on to the next slide, this one's probably going to capture what I like to consider some of the challenges that you might have with utility bills. And this slide will capture some of the challenges on the top left. You can see I've got those listed, and I'm going to offer some simple solutions. So if we start with with the simple solution, starting from the left to the right, aside from the cost of the commodities themselves, the greatest challenge concerning utilities is really managing the data. As Tom mentioned earlier, without using the MRI platform, it would be very difficult to move this data, get the data first of all, then move it around to your advantage. From keeping track of all your utility bills to paying them on time to negotiating better rates for gas and electricity, better data management is going to be the key to your success. And so if we move over to the measurement side, typically when we talk about that, we're looking at actual meters on either individual spaces or within a building or building complex. And the golden rule, if something's not measured, it's less likely to be improved. And so submetering, it offers a powerful tool used to measure the valuable consumption data. It allows you to drill down from the building level to the tenant level, and that information can be used in a lot of ways. Once the consumption data is drilled down from the tenant level, it can be converted into a recoverable cost on two levels. First, the data can be used to identify irregular consumption, and next, you can take that information and correct the problems. If you don't know, where some irregular water usage, for example, is taking place, you're really going to go through the older methods of trying to find that. If you have meters, you're going to have laser view as to where the consumption's taking place. The next way that the data can be used to recover some of these costs would obviously be to take the data and convert it into consumption-based invoices. That would allow you to recover the cost directly from tenants. And so this slide, again, it takes basically some of the problems of controlling the actual paper tiger of receiving utility bills and what you do with that information, how quickly you can process that information, to measuring it using utility submeters, and then ways you can recover the costs of utilities through either, again, capturing some of that information and putting some plans in place to correct irregular consumption, or actually billing it. And we can move to the next slide. So the leverage everyone on this call today has is the ability to traffic all of this data through MRI. And so what I'd like to do is just briefly touch upon each of these data management opportunities, starting with the very top of the slide. The capacity to reduce accounts payable costs by outsourcing the utility payment process is made possible really through the ability to tie utility expense data to the proper site and ledger codes within your MRI software. Enhancing cash flow through conservation is made possible by pairing metered consumption data with occupancy data. And likewise, shifting the costs to tenants is accomplished by tying metered or allocated costs to specific occupants and further leveraging that into various payment options, which would really dovetail into what Tom just spoke about. The recovering of the utility theft and overcharges relies heavily upon occupancy and consumption data comparisons, and that's where you might have electric or gas bills that are reverting in and out of the property's name because there aren't continuing service agreements. If you have a bill payment service in place, the integration and the access to the data would allow you to make the comparisons necessary to capture those costs and actually pass them right back to the tenant who was supposed to be paying them in the first place. And then lastly, the streamlining budgeting efforts is made possible through the accumulation and convenient presentation of utility data. And the presentation of the data, we're going to learn a little bit more about that when Datex speaks to you in just a few moments. We could move on to the next slide. So this last slide could certainly be much larger than it is. I just wanted to show a few examples of how the power of data can be put to use in the utility space beyond the more obvious practice of sub-meter billing. The capacity to secure and store, access, and translate utility consumption data makes the ability to detect leaks, implement conservation programs, and put energy loads up for bid, and many other value-enhancing measures quite simple, just because the information is right there at your fingertips. With that, I think I'll turn it over to our final MRI Partner Connect presenter, Datex Property Solutions.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. My name is Scott Mahler. I'm from Datex Property Solutions, and I'm very excited to be here with these two great companies because, they share our passion for data. One of the things that Datex believes is that data done right is real estate business intelligence, and our governing philosophy has always been that you manage what you measure. So let's take a few minutes and introduce you to Datex. If I can see the next slide, please. Thank you. So who is Datex? Datex, we've been in business for over 15 years, and we've worked with MRI data in that time. We have spent our time working with our clients to help them leverage their data, and our passion and our focus is 100% on real estate portfolio management. We cover the verticals from commercial to multifamily residential, and we're very deep in retail, in the retail space. Some of our customers that we've had over the years and currently have are Sencor Communities, which is Sencor Realty Services, a large shopping center developer and third-party fee manager in Texas. Carefree Communities, a REIT that specializes in the manufactured home space and the RV space. H.C. Fenton, which is an owner of apartment buildings and industrial space in San Diego. And Oliver McMillan, which is a developer of large multi-use properties. So our focus is spread throughout the spectrum of the different areas of real estate. On the next slide, I want to talk about what we do. So what we do is, we have our system is called Real Estate Business Intelligence. And while I'm going to focus on visualization for the majority of this demo, the idea that the data that you have in your MRI system, that we overlay MRI, allows you to leverage what's already been done. One of the things we firmly believe is there should be no data entry. Things that Studebaker talked about and ClickPay is the idea of having the data electronically so you don't have to double enter it. That's what our philosophy is. We want to basically overlay your system and use what you've already built in MRI to use our system. So we run the track from visualization. We do reporting where based on your data we're able to do third-party, management reports for your third-party clients or your investors tracking to make sure that your insurance information is tracked from your residents or your tenants, the sales reporting, to be able to see budget variances and delinquencies. We have a CAM module as well as an investor management module to allow your investors to see their data when they want to see it. If you go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about visualization, we believe visualization is the key to unlocking your data. In the 15 years we've been doing business, one of the things that we have learned is that everyone loves data. The more, the merrier. But what we've also found is that most of our end users, and probably most of you, are not data scientists. You don't have the time to, or sometimes the skill set to create these great graphs and drill downs. That's where we come in. We've learned that we want to present our data in the KPIs in a way that you can see it. We are very big believers in variances and drill downs. And so, we believe that you want to see your business in pictures, charts, and graphs. I mean, that's the key. So you can easily spot the discrepancies, the variances, the outliers. But one of the nice parts about this also is we provide the ability to click on any of the data details and drill down to the actual detail. If you're looking at a variance on, let's say your meters are out of control, your electric bill is out of control, you can drill down all the way down to the actual invoice and see that and be able to see what the reason is for the variance. And we believe that it's a lot more powerful to be able to see your variance when it's 40% higher and be able to react to that quickly. Thank you. So, we also believe you manage what you measure. And, the whole point is that you want to have at your fingertips the ability to quickly see which of your property managers are best and worst at rent collections. The ability to see, again, as I said, your expense categories, which one of them are out of normal range, to be able to see the huge variance and click down on them. When it comes to things like tracking insurance policies, which ones will be collapsing soon, we use the term slip happens for when insurance policies expire and you weren't aware of it. We provide the tools to allow you to make sure that your policies don't expire and then you can capture it. Which of your tenants are at the greatest risk of defaulting? In the retail world, there's the concept of occupancy cost, which basically tells you what is the percentage of a tenant's sales against their rent. So if you can see that their tenants' occupancy costs are going higher, you can quickly determine that they would be someone that's at risk of defaulting. Same way if they're in a category like Radio Shack was. If you knew that Radio Shack was going out of business, you can look at your portfolio to see the other people in that space. And when it comes to residents, the ability to see who's constantly late paying more and more and more to identify those tenants residents ahead of time, which will allow you. So, so you can point out, and we built out these algorithms to let you know who is most likely to default. If you can do me a favor, move on to the next screen as well. So over the years, we have built out a powerful set of dashboards based on our working with our clients. What I'm showing you here are 3 of our dashboards. To the left, the very first one is the budget variance. This is an example where we tie into your MRI data. You'll notice that the drop-down list, that comes from the MRI account groups. So you can basically have those already set up in MRI, and our dashboard just overlays what you've already set up, and there so you can have the drill down all the way down to the individual GL transaction. In the middle, we're talking about a property level dashboard that gives you examples for looking at a property where you can see your occupancy at a snapshot, who your highest tenants are in terms of rent per square foot or rent, rent dollars. What are your problem tenants? Which tenants have reported sales late? Be able to see how you're trending in terms of your equity. What's your loan to value for the property? To the right, I'm showing you a retail where you're showing your sales, and you'll be able to see things, how your square footage is broken down by category and subcategory, and quickly eyeball that to see how the sales on those categories or subcategories are doing as well. We provide the ability to look at 3-year comparisons when it comes to your sales categories when you look at a 5-year trend of sales. And again, the ability to see who's got your best and worst occupancy costs. And the greatness of what we provide is that it all works on your MRI data. It just overlays the data. And because it's built on the best practices and it's standardized, when we hand off, when we get a new client and we set them up within, 4 to 6 weeks, we're able to hand out the keys to the system for them, and they can just start using it. It just makes it that simple by leveraging what's already in MRI. Nick, I think it's back to you now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you to all three of you for the great overviews of your products. So what have we already learned? So MRI software, we're working with best-of-breed solutions, and we're doing that to create unified data store for utility billing, accounting, payment, collections, and property management. Workflows that lead to simplified best practices, and at the end of the day, we want to provide real-time data, give you better reporting. All of this is to help, as Datex just mentioned, to help benchmark and then visualize your data so that you can make informed decisions. And here at MRI, as we spoke to, we're really about open data and having relationships with other partners so that you get a holistic view of what's happening in your business, whether you're using MRI, whether you're using one of the partners. Being able to work with everybody together in one unified sense lets you make better decisions. And this open data gives you a distinct advantage so that you can be smarter with your data. So different facets of your organization, they're going to have different views and have different needs. And we realize that a lot of you use other products, and that's why we want to work with some of these best-of-breed solutions, that you can identify the best practices for your company and the best way to go about doing your business. Because at the end of the day, we are creating software, but we're creating it for you, for your use, for your business. So we want to cater to what makes the most sense to save you the most time and the most money. So as we've already spoken to here, we've given some insight into what these companies do. And Scott, I think I'm going to take it back to you to present an actual kind of real-life scenario of how this open data works between some of these companies.
Sounds good, Nick. Thank you. So, yeah, I want to give an example of a client that is basically utilizing the technology of all three of the companies that have been spoken here. So, in this example, or in this, for the Senate, they have 4,000 residents that were on a monthly basis getting over 12,000 transactions when it comes to the utility readings, when it comes to, you know, their water, their gas, and their electric. And it was a very manual process. And it was taking 2 weeks to do, you know, 2 people, 40 hours a week, trying to get this data. And it was very, very error-prone because it was rekeying of data, and it was taking a lot of time, and it took a long time for them to get their money from the residents because they couldn't pass the charges through to the residents in time to collect their data because it was a pass-through expense. So what they ended up doing is they did 3 things. They involved all 3 of our technologies. The very first part was by working with, you know, to get the data sub-metered, they were able to get the data from the meters in an electronic format so that they would then be able to import that data into MRI. So that was the very first step because that made that process a lot faster. The second part, though, was to make sure that before it went into MRI, that they were able to visualize the data, and they would basically be able to do exception reporting. And what I mean by exception reporting is, I'm sure most of you know, like when you get charges and things and data from third party, you may have a resident assigned to the wrong apartment. You may have the wrong charge codes assigned that may not be in your system. Again, you may have names that are no longer active that you're getting charges to. And so all these things, after they would be put into MRI, would cause problems for them, and they have to go back and clean up the data. So what they would then do is they created the reports to show the exceptions. They had it highlighted in graphs so they can quickly see any of the variances and drill down and see what the transactions are. And then they were able to move the data into MRI, get it set up appropriately. And then, they did that with the submarine because it was broken down by the different categories. After it was approved and visualized and they saw the report, they moved to MRI, and then they were able to quickly create the tenant transactions. And so, you know, the other part that they did is, again, they went and got an online pay system where they were able to set up one-time payments, online payments, auto payments, so that they were able to capture and recapture the data, the payments quickly from their residents, which meant that they weren't, you know, their cash flow was much faster as far as collecting it and bringing it all together. And so again, by bringing all 3 of these technologies together, they were able to basically get it took them less than a month to get a payback on the savings of the cost of that technology, and it's been paying dividends for years. So back to you, Nick.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott. So great example there. We're going to now move into kind of some questions from me, questions from all of you on the phone if you have them. But before we get into that, because we're going to be running this up until probably the top of the hour here, if you do want to continue the conversation with any of these three partners, you'll see contact information below, both for their sales teams as well as for them individually. Definitely encourage you to reach out to any of them that may tickle your interest. And one thing I will say as well is at the end of this session, when you close out a WebEx, you will be presented with a survey. We definitely would like to know your feedback on a session like this. We, as MRI software, want to give you the ability to see some of these solutions high level quickly and being able to get through some of these at a more rapid pace so you're able to kind of decide which solutions may be more catered to your business. If this is something you'd like us to continue, please let us know in the comments, as well as other partners from our Partner Connect program that you'd like to see in a session similar to this one. So with that, I've got some questions here that I'm going to start with, and please, as we said at the beginning of the session, in the Q&A tool, please enter any questions that you may have that we can present to our panelists today. I'm going to kind of start with ClickPay, and then actually, Ringo, I think you can answer this one as well. We did talk a lot about data, and at a very high level, the importance of data. But what kind of data specifically are we talking about for billing and payment? And Tom, if you want to go ahead and take that one first.
Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, at a high level, the data that comes to us, can be considered just the rent roll, all the tenants' first names, last names, their property IDs, their tenant IDs, and, their balance due and charges. So that's kind of the data that's coming into ClickPay. And then the data that's coming out of ClickPay are the payment data has to get back into MRI and then apply to the right ledger, and that's kind of how the data exchange works. And on a more sophisticated level, we're using even kind of other fields like lease type, for example. That data is coming into ClickPay, and or at least lease expiration date, those kind of things, because they drive payment acceptance rules. We have clients who say, hey, when the lease ends, don't take payments anymore, even if they keep sending payments, because we don't want to have to return them. Just reject the payment. Or if it's a rent-stabilized unit versus a fair market unit, the rent-stabilized unit might be the only thing they can pay is their balance due, nothing more, nothing less, so there has to be kind of a validation of that, where a fair market can make prepayments and partial payments. So a lot of payment acceptance rules are being driven by even some of the less common, rent roll fields in MRI. Really all of the data is used by different clients to be able to conform. And even on, where somebody doesn't even have a tenant ID yet, they're in the process of moving in, and they're in MRI, they're kind of creating a tenant. They're creating charges like first month's rent, security deposit, and pet fee. We now have the ability where we're generating kind of a mobile-friendly form that is sent to the resident to say, this is how much you owe for rent, security deposit, pet fee. They just enter their payment method and hit submit, and the money actually moves to multiple bank accounts. So the security deposit's going to the security deposit. The tenant's clicking submit once, but they're really making 3 different transactions, and the money's moving to different bank accounts and applying to different charge codes back into MRI. And that's kind of the level of sophistication that we've been able to take it to.
That's great, Tom. Ringo, what about on the Studebaker side?
On the sub-metering side, you're looking mostly at the consumption and the accounts receivable data. The data itself can be used for various things, net common area consumption and cost. The irregular usage data is really invaluable, like I talked about earlier. On the bill payment side, if you had somebody who was interested in outsourcing the utility bill payment, then the data you're really talking about there is tying the utility expense to the GL, and likewise for the sub-metering too, if you're billing it out to the tenants, because if you wanted to handle the remittance yourself or have a company like ClickPay handle the remittance, you would be using the charge codes for the various utilities. And if they wanted to completely outsource the billing and the remittance, which is something we also do, then the data for the sub-metering would pretty much be us accessing the occupancy information and then using the data you get from the receipts of those utility bills to make those, again, the common area versus in-unit consumption comparisons, and then using Datex solutions, you could pretty much take the raw data that we would obtain from the utility companies' utility bills, as well as the consumption information at the unit level, and you can slice and dice that data up pretty much as far as your imagination can take it.
Great, thank you, Ringo. So let's take this question and kind of move it a little bit further down the process, and I'll address this one to Datex. Once you have this data, what can the data tell you in terms of insight?
The data can tell you a lot of things. The data can tell you, for example, when you're looking at your vacancies or occupancies, how is it trending? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What's the cause of it? The data can tell you which are your tenants. Let's talk about occupancy costs. Which category of your tenants have the highest occupancy costs versus which have the lowest occupancy costs. It can tell you, as we talked about earlier, predictive analytics, the ability it would tell you about the ability to know who is not going to be performing well in the future. When it comes to your expenses, looking at your GL, to be able to see your expenses on a budget variance level and be able to compare them at an eyeball and see the data that way. It just allows you to drill down and know exactly how your business is performing, and you have the ability to see it at different levels. If you want to look at it from a portfolio standpoint or a property manager standpoint or down to a building view, you can slice and dice your data that way to quickly get the answers that you want to see.
Perfect, thank you. So a question that has come in specifically relating to MRI, and I think I'm going to ask it to each of you individually here, is what version of MRI does the client need to be on in order to utilize your solution in that integration with MRI software? So Tom, what version of MRI does ClickPay work with?
The short answer is really I haven't found a version that we won't work with, but the more specific answer is in order to have the benefits of kind of that full API that we've spent a lot of time talking about, it's 4.5.4 and up, either self-hosted or SaaS. But we have clients with older versions of MRI that are happy with the way it works, but it's on an older kind of scheduled data exchange basis, not an API.
Great. Ringo?
I'd say pretty much the same thing that Tom just said, actually.
Okay. And Datex?
Yeah, with Datex, we work with both the self-hosted, where we're able to work with the SQL databases directly and be directly integrated with them, as well as working with the APIs that MRI has created. And our system works, like I said, both with self-hosted and with SaaS.
Great. So looking at this from an integration standpoint, what does integration look like? Moving into these new systems. And Tom, I'll go ahead and start with you once again with ClickPay.
Yeah, so, back in the day, it used to be a much more cumbersome process. We would oftentimes have to engage, either MRI or a third-party MRI consultant to go into our new customers' system and then basically kind of install a kind of canned report, but then they would have to tweak the report to generate the data and set up a scheduled system to push it to us in a reliable method, and it was a little more burdensome. But the API, and I'm going to oversimplify it, but it's essentially, you call your MRI rep up, you sign a piece of paper, there's no fee for it, but you just sign a piece of paper saying that it's okay to exchange data with ClickPay. You sign that piece of paper, you get a key, we get a key, we both companies enter the key on both sides. You run a couple of test transactions off the and ensure that it's batching the payments in correctly, and you go live. I mean, it's a end-to-end. It's a couple-week process. It's not nothing lengthy to it.
Great.
And there's no cost or third-party integrators or anything really needed unless you have kind of some very custom requirements.
Okay. Datex.
Yeah, we completely overlay your MRI system. As I mentioned earlier, we are fully integrated at the SQL level with, we've built up a library of over 1,000 different stored procedures to be able to push and pull data from MRI. But before we even start, we make sure we analyze your data. We do a thorough review of the database to try to uncover any anomalies or problems or features that haven't been set up properly in MRI. And fields that haven't been taken advantage of to use the full capabilities of MRI. Examples being if you're using for retail, national tenants or your categories or subcategories. We check to see if you're using a one-to-one correspondence between the building and the entity table, or using the fields in the entity table to determine when you bought and sold the property. Making sure that your GL accounts are set up or your account groups are set up. By doing that ahead of time, we make sure that your data is working as cleanly as possible, as best as possible. And then when we go and we install the system, it just works because the data is right there, and it allows us to just fully integrate with your system.
Perfect. Thank you. I did get a question in here, and I think this kind of relates a little bit from Renee, and she's asking if it's better to connect with the partners directly or go through the MRI contact. And Renee, truly, either option works, whichever is easier for you. If you do reach out to your MRI contact, they can help kind of set the groundwork with these partners and let them know your unique situation. Hopefully they know your unique situation so that it's a more streamlined process in being able to find exactly what it is you're looking for and how to best work with our partners. Okay, so it looks like we have 2 minutes left. With that, I'll ask ClickPay, do you have any best practices that you'd like to share as we kind of close out this session?
Yeah, I would say the best practice is probably the simplest one, is just to make sure that the team of people that you may have working with MRI and entering in MRI, leasing people, et cetera, that they know the importance of clean data. If they, small things like misspelling somebody's last name could prevent somebody from being able to register easily on in an online payment portal, or switching names in different fields, or if you're capturing email addresses in some form but you're not entering into MRI, you're missing out on an opportunity to be able to leverage, mobile phone numbers, emails. There are things that you can do that really can improve your business if you take the time to focus on the quality of the data that's going into your system. That'd be my main advice.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And Datex, 60 seconds.
Yeah, no pressure, thanks. Yeah, we have on our website, we have created some documents that show top 5 tips to document the things that you want to do. Things that making sure your data is data-driven, that you manage what you measure, leverage the data you already have. Things that basically specify what fields should be set up in the best way to do the data. And, we focus on specific purpose-based outcomes.
Thank you very much for that, Scott. And with that, we are at the top of the hour. Again, I would like to thank Tom, Ringo, and Scott for all joining me and MRI Software today in presenting their solutions. And as clients, I hope you all found this very valuable. And like I said, there will be a survey that comes out, so please let us know. In that survey as well, there is an option if you'd like one of these partners to reach out to you, and we'll get that information over to them as soon as we can. So thank you all very much for your time today, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.